Do you take her to be your wife?
Mommy, why does that man look like Leo?
The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hyatt Seoul cast fractured light across the ballroom, scattering reflections over 500 members of South Korea's most powerful families. Cameras flashed in synchronized bursts along the media wall, where banners celebrated the merger between Hanul Group and the Shinhwa Syndicate. At 39, Kalen Seo looked exactly like the heir his mother had spent decades shaping. His charcoal three-piece suit fit perfectly. His posture was flawless. His expression revealed nothing. But beneath the polished exterior, he felt strangely hollow. He watched Yoo Se-rin step onto the aisle, her diamond-studded veil glittering beneath the lights. She smiled beautifully, the picture of elegance and privilege. Everyone in the room saw a future chairwoman. Kalen saw duty. The scent of white roses filled the ballroom, but his mind drifted somewhere else entirely. For a moment, the perfume faded and was replaced by the memory of rain and cheap convenience store coffee. 6 years earlier, a storm had driven him into a small cafe where he had been hiding from endless meetings and suffocating family expectations. Then the door had burst open. A woman rushed inside with a broken umbrella, laughing at her own bad luck. Mira Barnabas, a Kenyan humanitarian architect with bright, expressive eyes and an independence that ignored social class completely. Kalen had spent his life surrounded by people who cared about status. Mira cared about people. Where his world had been rigid and silent, she brought warmth and life. She never looked at his title. She looked at him. Their marriage had lasted only a year, but in that short time she had managed to turn loneliness into something that felt like home. Then came the divorce. 5 years earlier, inside a cold legal office, she had signed the papers and disappeared from South Korea without looking back. Since then, Kalen had buried the pain beneath work and convinced himself it no longer mattered. He blinked, forcing the memories away as Se-rin reached the altar. She extended her hand. Beneath her gloves, her fingers trembled slightly. Kalen reached for her automatically. Then his eyes wandered beyond the photographers toward the glass doors leading to the courtyard garden. Everything inside him froze. Standing near the marble fountain was a tall black woman in a cream blazer. Natural curls framed a face he had never forgotten. Mira. His breathing stopped. Across the ballroom, her eyes met his. But she wasn't alone. 2 small children stood beside her, a boy and a girl no older than 4. The boy looked toward the altar. Even from a distance, Kalen saw it. The shape of the jaw. The eyes. His eyes. The world around him faded into silence. Mira's expression changed instantly. Shock. Then fear. Beside her, the little girl tugged on her jacket and pointed toward the altar. Without hesitation, Mira grabbed both children's hands and hurried away, disappearing through the courtyard exit. Chairman Seo? The officiant's voice snapped him back to reality. Se-rin stared at him, confusion creeping across her face. Around them, the ballroom had gone strangely quiet. Kalen lowered his eyes to the platinum wedding band resting on the velvet cushion. Then he remembered Mira crying on the day she left. And the boy. 4 years old. The calculation struck him like a physical blow. Do you, Kalen Seo? The officiant repeated carefully. Take Yoo Se-rin to be your lawfully wedded wife? His hand trembled. Only slightly. Slowly, he released Se-rin's fingers. Out of habit, he twisted the silver signet ring on his pinky, the same motion he used whenever he made difficult decisions. I'm sorry, he said quietly. The microphone carried his words through the silent ballroom. I can't do this. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kalen. The sharp whisper came from the front row. Chairwoman Kang stood rigidly, fury flashing behind her composed expression. Kalen didn't turn around. He walked past his mother, past the stunned guests, past the cameras. Then he broke into a run. Rain slammed into him the moment he burst outside. Within seconds, his tuxedo was soaked, and his carefully styled hair collapsed across his forehead. He searched the crowded street desperately. Then he saw it. A yellow taxi waiting near the intersection. Through the rain-streaked rear window, a small boy stared back at him. Kalen ran. "Mira!" He reached the taxi just as the door closed and yanked it open. Inside, Mira instinctively moved in front of the twins. The children retreated into the corner of the seat. Her face remained calm, but her hands trembled. "Mira, please." Rain dripped from his face as he struggled to catch his breath. He looked at the children again. His voice cracked. "Are they mine?" The question hung in the air. "Why didn't you tell me?" For several seconds, Mira simply stared at him. There was no anger in her eyes, only exhaustion. Slowly, she reached for his wrist and removed his hand from the door. "You lost the right to ask me that 5 years ago." Her voice was quiet, but it hurt more than shouting ever could. She closed the door. The taxi pulled away. Kalen stood alone in the rain, watching the taillights disappear into the Seoul traffic. For the first time in years, the most powerful man in the country felt completely helpless. By Monday morning, the headlines had moved on from the wedding itself. Now the news focused on the damage. Red numbers flashed across financial channels as Hanul Group shares dropped 11% at opening. Analysts debated succession plans. Investors demanded explanations. The Shinhwa family released carefully worded statements that fooled no one. High above the Han River, Kalen sat alone in his dark office. His wedding tuxedo was gone. In its place was a plain black sweater and 2 sleepless nights carved beneath his eyes. Calls from directors, shareholders, and reporters filled his phone with endless notifications. He ignored every one of them. The knock never came. The office door opened, and Chairwoman Kang entered with the quiet authority she had carried for decades. Her silver-tipped cane tapped against the marble floor in steady rhythm. "You have 12 hours to issue a statement," she said calmly. "Medical exhaustion, temporary emotional distress, something acceptable." She remained standing. "The Shinhwa family expects a formal apology. You will repair this disgrace and return to the altar before the end of the month." Her fingers slowly rotated the jade ring on her hand. "I did not spend 30 years creating a successor only to watch him throw everything away because of a woman who disappeared 5 years ago." Kalen said nothing. Instead, he reached into his pocket and removed his Hanul Group identification card. He placed it on the desk between them. "Call the vote." His voice was quiet, almost tired. For the first time in years, his mother looked genuinely surprised. "You would surrender your position?" Kalen stood. "If that's the price." Her grip tightened around her cane. "Without Hanul, you are nothing." He paused beside her. "Maybe that's exactly what I need to find out." Then he walked out. By Tuesday evening, a private investigator Kalen had hired through personal accounts handed him a thick manila envelope in a narrow alley in Guro district. Rainwater dripped from nearby rooftops. "She's been back in Korea less than 2 weeks," the investigator said quietly. "She avoided her old records and entered under her maiden name." He handed over several photographs. Freelance sustainability consultant, small independent contracts, 3rd floor apartment 3 blocks from here. Kalen glanced at the file. "Is someone supporting her financially?" The investigator shook his head. "No." He hesitated. "She never touched the divorce settlement." Kalen looked up sharply. "Not one?" "Not one." The man lowered his voice. "From what I found, she's been supporting herself for years. Most nights she works remotely until 2 or 3 in the morning after the children are asleep." Something tightened painfully inside Kalen's chest. He dismissed the investigator and continued on foot. Guro felt like another world. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and wet pavement. Small restaurants glowed beneath neon signs. Elderly shopkeepers swept rainwater from their entrances. Nothing here resembled the sterile luxury he had known. Across from an old brick apartment building, Kalen stopped beneath the awning of a convenience store. On the 3rd floor, one window remained lit. Through the curtains, he saw Mira. Gone was the elegant blazer from the wedding. She wore an oversized sweater and sat at a tiny kitchen table with her laptop open. Every few minutes, she rubbed her tired eyes before glancing toward the bedroom. Then a small figure appeared. The little boy. Leo. Still half asleep, he shuffled into the kitchen and rested his head against his mother's leg. Mira's entire expression softened. Without hesitation, she closed her laptop and lifted him onto her lap. She rocked him gently while whispering something only he could hear. Kaylin gripped the cold metal railing beside him. For 5 years, he had convinced himself she had abandoned him. Meanwhile, she had been carrying everything alone. She looks happy. The voice behind him made him stiffen. Yu Seirin stood beneath the neon lights. Gone was the bridal gown. Tonight she wore an expensive trench coat, though the perfect image she usually maintained had begun to crack. Her makeup was flawless, but anger flickered behind her eyes. "I knew I'd find you here," she said. Her gaze drifted toward Mira's apartment. "So this is what ruined my life?" Kaylin didn't answer. "A woman living in a rundown apartment with 2 children? Enough." His voice came out colder than he intended. "Go home, Seirin." Her laugh was sharp. "What home?" She stepped closer. "My father won't answer my calls. My friends have disappeared. Everyone is pretending they never knew me." Tears gathered in her eyes, but resentment drowned them. "You humiliated me in front of the entire country." She pointed toward the apartment window. "And now you're throwing everything away for her?" Kaylin remained silent. That only made her angrier. "Do you really think your mother will allow those children into the Seo family?" She leaned closer. "I've already spoken with lawyers." His eyes narrowed. "What lawyers?" "The kind who understand immigration law." A smile appeared on her lips, but there was nothing pleasant about it. A foreign national with irregular documentation and undeclared dependents attracts attention. Kaylin's expression hardened instantly. "If I can't have my future," Seirin whispered, "why should she have hers?" For a moment, he barely recognized the woman standing before him. "You're drunk." "No." Her smile trembled. "I'm desperate." Then she turned and disappeared into the darkness. Kaylin stood frozen. The warm apartment window suddenly felt exposed. Vulnerable. He pulled out his phone immediately. The investigator answered on the second ring. "I need everything from the divorce," Kaylin said. "Every document, every meeting record, every file my mother's legal team touched." His voice shook. "Find out what really happened." 30 minutes later, an encrypted transfer appeared on his phone. A voice message followed. For the first time since Kaylin had hired him, the investigator sounded unsettled. "Chairman." Static crackled across the line. "I accessed the old archive." A long pause followed. Then the man's voice lowered. "Your divorce wasn't what you thought." Another pause. "It wasn't a separation." Kaylin's blood ran cold. It was a setup. Silence filled the car. Then the investigator spoke the words that changed everything. "Someone destroyed your marriage on purpose." Kaylin stared at the tablet in his hands, the glow from the screen illuminating the dark interior of the sedan. The first file was familiar. Too familiar. It was the financial report from 5 years earlier. The same report Yu Seirin had used to convince him that Mira had sold Hanil Group's eco-infrastructure designs to a competitor. Back then, he had never questioned it. Now he read every page with growing dread. Forged transfers, manufactured emails, altered timestamps. Then he reached the hidden server logs attached to the archive. His blood ran cold. Every piece of fabricated evidence traced back to one source. Yu Seirin's personal computer. She hadn't merely spread rumors. She had built the entire lie. With shaking fingers, Kaylin opened the next file, an audio recording, meeting_Kang_M_0412. A soft hiss filled the car. Then came the unmistakable sound of a walking cane striking marble. His mother's voice followed. Calm, controlled, merciless. "You're an architect, Miss Barnabas. You understand pressure?" A brief pause. "If you remain in Korea, Hanul Group will bury your family's company in Nairobi under lawsuits. Your father will spend the rest of his life paying legal fees." Silence. Then Mira spoke. Her voice trembled, but there was conviction behind it. "Kaylin would never allow this. He knows me." Chairwoman Kang answered immediately. "My son sees only what I allow him to see." The sound of jade tapping against glass echoed softly. "At this very moment, he believes you're a corporate spy." Another pause. Then came the words that nearly stopped Kaylin's heart. "Our records show you visited a clinic this morning." A rustle of paper. "Twins." The next sentence made his hands tremble. "If you stay, I will use every legal avenue available to separate those children from you. They will grow up under the CO name, but they will never know their mother." The silence that followed felt endless. Then his mother spoke again. "Sign the papers and disappear." Mira's voice never returned. The recording ended with the sharp sound of a pen touching paper. Kaylin dropped the tablet onto the seat beside him. For several seconds he couldn't breathe. Everything he had believed for 5 years collapsed. Mira hadn't abandoned him. She had sacrificed herself. She had allowed him to hate her because protecting their children mattered more than protecting her own heart. "Drive." His voice came out broken. "Hanul headquarters." The tower was almost empty by the time he arrived. Without slowing down, Kaylin bypassed security and pushed open the boardroom doors. Chairwoman Kang sat alone at the head of the table. She glanced up over her glasses. "You look terrible," she said calmly. "The board meets at 9. Go home and collect yourself." Kaylin walked toward her. Slowly, deliberately. He removed a small digital drive from his pocket and tossed it across the table. It slid to a stop beside her cane. "I know." Only 2 words, but they made her eyes narrow. "I know what Siren did." Silence. "I know what you did." Still, she said nothing. "And I know about my children." Chairwoman Kang adjusted her glasses. Her expression barely changed. "I protected this family. You destroyed it." A Kenyan architect with no political influence could never secure Hanul's future. She gestured toward the skyline beyond the windows. "Look at what you own." Kaylin stared at her. Then he spoke quietly. "I own nothing." For the first time in his life, he looked at his mother without fear. "I'm surrendering my voting shares." Her eyes widened slightly. "I am withdrawing from the company." Her composure finally cracked. "You would throw away everything?" "No." His voice remained calm. "You already threw it away 5 years ago." Her grip tightened around her cane. "You'll become irrelevant." He nodded. "Maybe." Then he looked directly into her eyes. "But at least I'll finally become my own man." Without another word, he turned and walked out. Outside, his investigators stood waiting beside the sedan. He handed Kaylin a white envelope. "The expedited DNA results." Kaylin opened it immediately. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. His vision blurred. 4 years, 4 birthdays, 4 years of first words and bedtime stories. Gone. Not because Mira had left him, because he had trusted the wrong people. He wiped his eyes and climbed back into the car. "Drive to Guro." The sedan sped through Seoul. Kaylin barely noticed the traffic. He had one thought. Reach Mira before it was too late. He ran up the apartment stairs 2 at a time and stopped outside Unit 302. "Mira!" He pounded on the door. "Mira, please, open the door." His voice cracked. "I know the truth." The door slowly swung inward. Unlocked. A terrible feeling settled in his stomach. He stepped inside. The apartment was empty. No laptop, no toys, no clothes, no traces of children's laughter. Only silence. And the faint scent of Mira's lavender perfume lingering in the air. His chest tightened. He was too late. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. Hands shaking, he opened the message. Siren's lawyers came this afternoon. Your family will never accept us, Kaylin. I spent 5 years protecting our children. I'll spend 50 more if I have to. Please don't look for us. Goodbye. Kaylin stood alone in the empty apartment. The message blurred through tears. For the third time that week, he felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. And this time, there was no one left to run after. 6 months later, Seoul finally felt far away. The endless meetings, the boardrooms, the headlines and expectations had slowly faded into memory. With every country he crossed and every lead he followed, Kaylin had shed another piece of the life he once thought defined him. The expensive suits were gone. So was the carefully crafted image. Now he wore simple linen shirts and comfortable trousers. His hair had grown naturally, and months beneath the African sun had left his skin darker and his features leaner. He had transferred his remaining personal assets into independent accounts, beyond his family's influence. The chairman of Hanul Group no longer existed. He was simply a man looking for his family. That search eventually led him to a small hillside community outside Nairobi. The landscape was alive with color. Red earth stretched beneath bright skies. Acacia trees swayed in the breeze, and children's laughter echoed from the nearby road. As Kaylin walked through town, something caught his attention. A newly completed community center stood proudly at the top of the hill. The building blended timber, glass, and local materials with elegant precision. He stopped. He knew those lines, those proportions, those details. Even after 5 years, he recognized Mira's work instantly. Attached to the building was a lively cafe filled with locals. Almost without thinking, he stepped inside. The interior was warm and welcoming. African artwork decorated the walls, and handmade pottery lined wooden shelves. Then his eyes settled on a familiar object. His breath caught. A small wooden elephant sat near the register. It was slightly crooked and imperfect, because he had made it. Years earlier, during their first anniversary, he had carved it himself after ruining 2 pieces of wood and nearly slicing his thumb. Mira had laughed at how terrible it looked. Then she had placed it on their kitchen shelf and declared it her favorite gift. After everything they had lost, she had kept it. A voice floated from the back room. Maya, crayons don't belong in your brother's juice. Kaylin froze. He knew that voice. A second later, Mira stepped through the curtain carrying a tray of fresh pastries. Sunlight filtered through the windows and caught the soft curls framing her face. She wore a colorful Katangi skirt beneath a simple apron. She looked peaceful, happy, real. Not the exhausted woman he had seen through a rain-soaked apartment window months earlier. In the corner, the twins sat at a small table. Leo concentrated on a drawing while Maya colored beside him. Then Leo looked up. His eyes widened. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph. Kaylin recognized it immediately. It was a candid picture Mira had taken years ago in Seoul, while he stood outside a convenience store laughing in the rain. The boy studied the photograph. Then he looked at Kaylin. His voice came out soft and uncertain. Mommy. Mira looked up. Is that Daddy? The tray slipped from her hands. The sound echoed through the cafe. For a moment, nobody moved. Kaylin saw fear flash across Mira's face. Instinct. The instinct to run. But then she looked at him properly. No security team, no luxury car, no expensive suit. Just tired eyes and 6 months' worth of hope. Something inside her softened. Kaylin took a step forward. He didn't talk about money. He didn't mention Hanul. He didn't defend himself. Tears filled his eyes. Slowly, he lowered himself onto his knees. I know everything. His voice broke. I found the files. Another breath. I heard the recording. His tears finally fell. I'm sorry, Mira. The cafe had become completely silent. I should have protected you. His hands trembled. Instead, you protected all of us. He swallowed hard. I missed years I can never get back. His voice became quieter. I can't undo that. He looked toward Leo and Maya. But if you'll allow me, he raised his eyes to hers. I want to know them. A painful smile appeared on his face. And maybe one day, earn the right to know you again too. Mira covered her mouth. For years she had carried everything alone. The fear, the loneliness, the impossible choices. And suddenly she was too tired to carry them anymore. Tears streamed down her face. She walked around the counter and knelt in front of him. Neither of them spoke. They simply held each other's hands. Then two small bodies crashed into them. Leo and Maya wrapped their arms around both parents, laughing because they didn't fully understand why the grown-ups were crying. And for the first time in years, none of them had to say goodbye. 6 months later, another sunrise painted the Kenyan hills gold. A beautiful, sustainable home overlooked the valley below. Kalen sat on the porch steps with a mug of coffee in his hand. Life had become quieter, better. Together, he and Mira had established a nonprofit foundation dedicated to building schools and community health centers across East Africa and underserved regions of South Korea. For the first time in his life, Kalen felt proud of what he was building. Not because it increased profits, but because it changed lives. Laughter exploded across the garden. Leo and Maya came running toward him. "Appa!" Leo shouted excitedly. "Look what we found." He held up a smooth river stone like buried treasure. Kalen laughed and gathered both children into his arms. Maya immediately began explaining a story only she understood, while Leo proudly presented his discovery. From the doorway, Mira watched them with a smile. She crossed the porch and rested a hand on Kalen's shoulder. He leaned into her touch instinctively. The morning breeze carried the scent of coffee, wildflowers, and fresh rain. For years, Kalen had believed success meant power. He had chased titles, approval, and an empire that demanded everything in return. In the end, he had walked away from all of it. Yet somehow, standing beneath the African sun with his wife beside him and his children in his arms, he realized he had never been richer, because the life he almost lost had become the life worth living. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes that love is worth fighting for. Welcome to Afrock Dynasty Studios, where every story reminds us that family is the greatest legacy of all.